My name is Ashley, and this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it. Do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and beer.
Years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Saying community policing, right? What about community dispatching?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset.
Right.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode here. Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And today we're going to be talking about what the secret is to hiring and retaining quality 911 operators and dispatchers. As you all know, if you've been following me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, socials, this podcast, the world needs more dispatchers. The world needs more officers, firefighters, etc., first responders in general. So it is definitely a big goal of mine to help folks, especially aspiring dispatchers, through the application process and into these seats and these comm centers, ultimately reducing that mandatory overtime and the stress that we feel in our comm centers when we're understaffed. My guest today, Christian, he is a retired New York Police Department captain. He is a creator of Ten-4 Consulting, and he is here to talk about his experience in emergency services, from their career as a police officer to leading the department's radio communication division as a captain, and hopefully share a little bit of the secret sauce of how to get and keep dispatchers in these centers. Hi, Christian. How are you?
Good, Ashley. How are you?
I am doing well. It's a little busy on my day off, and I've honestly been working a lot of overtime this week. So I think this is a very appropriate conversation to talk about when we're talking about staffing our centers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, your career, how you got in law enforcement, how you ended up in your department's comm center.
Sure. So I started in the NYPD in 1998 as a police officer, and I started out on patrol and worked in many different details. And throughout my career, I worked in internal affairs. And then as a captain, I realized that precinct life was not for me. And somebody that I worked for he oversaw NYPD's 911 division. And he asked me to go there. And let me tell you, Ashley, I just loved it. There was just nothing like it in the department. The people, the culture, the structure. It was just very different from working with cops day in and day out. And from there, I was very blessed. My career got elevated, and I was able to oversee the department's radio division, and of course, working in hand with 911. And I ended my career working in the department's Information Technology Bureau, and retired almost a year ago.
Awesome! Congrats.
Thank you.
Deserved.
Thank you.
Well, that sounds amazing. I always find it interesting how departments kind of structure inside of comm centers. For example, my first department, we had originally we had, I believe, a captain that was in-house. And then it kind of went away from that to a comm director who wasn't sworn. And I think now they're kind of back at my original agency to a sworn person kind of running it. My current agency, we don't have a sworn in-house, but we're much smaller. But I definitely do see the value of having sworn, in the actual center instead of having to call up when things start popping off, especially at a place like the New York Police Department. I would imagine it's a constant out there.
It is a constant, and while there are captains there and a uniform presence, the people who work 911, the dispatchers, and they're of course elevated and promoted. They really run the show there. They have all the knowledge, and they make everything happen. But working there made me realize how, first, the value that dispatchers and operators bring to law enforcement. And in retiring and creating my company, Ten-4 Consulting, my goal is to, I have many goals, to help the people in that industry, but to bring dispatchers and operators to the forefront, to the law enforcement community, and make law enforcement leaders recognize, what dispatchers are doing, and how vital they are, and that they are our partners in law enforcement. And I'm trying very hard to use my status, if you will, as a captain in the NYPD, to have that conversation with people and get them the recognition that they deserve.
So true. And I mean, I would say, and I think for, folks who are in this line of work, and folks who have worked patrol versus dispatch, the relationship between patrol and dispatch can be a little strange, right? Because I think a lot of it comes from each other not understanding the other's job.
Right,
type
absolutely.
of thing. How would you say that relationship between patrol has shifted over the years that you've been? Because you've been in it, and then you became a leader in it, and then you're leader on the side of the comm center side, dispatch side. How would you say that's changed over the years?
Well, I think you make a great point. Both sides, patrol and dispatch, and operators as well, they have their own set of procedures. And at a point, I think that we really started to make a difference in building that bridge. We brought so many cops, as many cops as we can, to the comm center. We had dispatchers do ride-alongs too. But of course, many years ago, things changed, and it was not safe for ride-alongs anymore. And the cops were understaffed, and they couldn't come out to the comm center anymore. So that kind of broke. But I think that it's very important for communications leaders, right? 911 leaders, directors, what have you. They must have a seat at the table in law enforcement, and creating strategies, crime fighting strategies, counterterrorism strategies, active shooter strategies. They have to be there. And, sometimes there would be issues in the department, and we would get called, and they say, okay, we need you to do this, this, and this. Okay, well, when do you need it by? Well, tomorrow. We're going to start this tomorrow. And that's unacceptable, right?
Yeah.
But nationwide, directors, they need to communicate that, listen, I got to be there. We have to be at that table on day one.
And it's very true, because what I've seen, is that dispatch historically has been left out of those conversations, right?
Absolutely.
Like, this is our game plan, let's say, for an active shooter, because I would say that is probably dispatch's worst call to take right now, especially like a school shooting or something like that. And we hear about our officers training for it, our command staff having a to-do list, a game plan, but then like dispatch kind of gets left out of it. And it's like, well, the first one to sound the alarm is going to be us. It's going to be the dispatcher who takes the call. So if we're left out of that conversation, that training, really, there's definitely a hole in that emergency response that forms, right?
Yeah, Ashley, you're making a great point. And if there is a police chief, captain, major, sheriff, whatever you want to call it, and they're doing active shooter training in a school and dispatches aren't included, I'll be very blunt. They are derelict in their duty, right? They owe it to the public. They owe it to their officers, and they owe it to the dispatchers to have them there on day one. And so that everybody jives, and that everybody's on the same page, and there's no surprises. So that is something that, they must do in their leadership capacity. They must ensure that dispatch has a seat at the table.
Great. It's so true. And I think one thing that I think is speaking volumes, from me hearing it coming from you, excuse me, is because you were, like you said, your status, like you were patrol, you were one of the folks boots on the ground. You did the stuff. It's not just a dispatcher coming and going, no, we need to be involved. It's like you are someone who was in it on that side, who sees that value, is trying to bring everybody into the fold together. And I think sometimes in this line of work and law enforcement in general, you kind of need that a little bit to break those windows, those barriers, etc., to get everybody on the same page. So I definitely think what you're doing is wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I think that 911 is so unique, and unless you again back to the law enforcement leadership, unless you're sitting in that PSAP, right? When people are calling out sick, when when stuff is happening, when the board is turning red and you're holding calls, unless you are truly invested in that and your ass is on the line, you don't know what goes on there, right? And making a visit there at Thanksgiving and Christmas doesn't cut it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It needs to be a constant flow of communication and working together as a team.
Definitely. Definitely. It's kind of what's that meme that goes around a lot, like, oh, you're burnt out, you're overworked, and management's like, pizza party, right? Like, like, no, it needs to be more than just the pizza party, right?
Yeah, it definitely needs to be more than a pizza party. I hope we could get into that further. 100%.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
What was your favorite part of overseeing the radio communications division?
So just to make a distinction, 911 and radio are two different entities, right? They're like sister commands, but they're two different entities. Overseeing radio, I learned so much about radio, and we talk about dispatchers. Let's talk about radio technicians too. The magic that they make happen to make the radio network actually work and function, right? So that cops can use it and dispatchers can use it without lapses in communication. What I liked most was implementing change and effectively, serving the people that work with me and the police officers in the department, giving them a reliable radio network and just creating a very structured work environment. That was my favorite part. And the people, I love the people there.
Awesome. So you got to be honest with us. Were you a mic eater when you were on patrol? Did you have to get 10-9'd a lot and have to repeat?
No, I definitely was not that person. I just always had so much respect for the dispatcher, and when I used to like to give speeches to cops who were in police academy and try to school them on etiquette when speaking to a dispatcher. The dispatcher has so much going on. They don't have time for the games and the phone calls and calling back complainants, all this other nonsense. The cops have to, do their job, right? You have to get out of the police car, you gotta listen. Now everything is on the phone too. You can read it. So I was very respectful of the dispatchers always.
Awesome. And I know it's so interesting, I think, for folks who are, not in the field and are just getting into the field. And even for me, I went from a larger agency where we had a warrant channel, and my job when I was working radio, I didn't run out folks like that. They went to a separate channel that we had 24/7 to do that. And now I'm at a smaller agency where I'm running people out. I'm doing the warrants, looking at the photos, doing all the research that my warrants channel did at my last agency. So when you speak about like the dispatcher got a lot going on, like they really do. Like there's just so many things that could be happening, especially at the smaller agencies, including like it's just me and my partner in here and the phones are going off, there's a fire, and then you're asking me to rent out 5 people in a car, and it's like, read the room. We don't got time for this right now.
Right.
But I mean, again, that goes back to the, you build the relationships, you have the conversations outside of the pizza parties to be able to understand everyone's role and what it looks like on the other side of the radio versus our side of the radio, right? And I would say the same is for like officers too. Like they're out there with 5 people, they're on high alert, right? And they want the information back for their officer safety stuff. And so it's all about us working together to understand all the stressors that these jobs have for us, because they are certainly unique in that sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So what made you start 10-4 Consulting? Like what brought all that about?
So I wanted to continue a career in public service, and I just always felt that dispatchers were given the short end of the stick, and hearing stories from across the country and across New York State about the woes in dispatch centers and um, agencies' problems to recruit and retain dispatchers. I felt that I could make a difference in that part of the industry. I had lots of experience doing that on the dispatch side and on the radio side. And my goal was just to help agencies, but in helping agencies, you're really helping the dispatchers, right? By hiring people, you're giving them their lives back, and uh, you're cutting back on their overtime, and you're making their work life better. And so that's my goal, is for dispatchers to have an improved quality of life at work.
Mm. So what is the secret sauce? What is it that you believe to help folks with, to help teach people about, to get dispatchers in the door and keep them there?
So there's many things. The first thing, I think, to retaining employees is engaging with your employees and speaking to them like they're people, right? And listening to them. I don't mean like hearing them. I mean like sitting with them and talking to them and listening to them, listening about their lives and their work life, and figuring out how can I make their life better? What resources can I give them? A leader's job is to provide resources to help their employees. So I think employee engagement is the first thing. Listening to your employees and actually doing something about it, not taking 2 months to put it in a committee and discuss it. If you're a leader, you got the power to make things happen like that. So I think it's a matter of delivering on their needs and having them trust you, saying things to them that are true, and being fair. Having a workplace that is full of fairness and justice. So when people want promotions, they want to elevate their career, they want to go to a specialized unit, that they're able to say, if they didn't get the position, that something, he or she, I'm disappointed I didn't get it, but he or she, I know that they're fair and they had their reasons, instead of the resentment, oh, this place is BS, and that type of thing. So having a fair workplace, with communication too, communicating matters to employees, telling them why we can or cannot do something. And I think the leader needs to speak on these things. They can't just delegate people to do things for them all the time. They need to address people face to face.
And how would you say, because I would say that historically, and if you go onto these Facebook groups and you get a little peek behind the curtain, I would say there is a bit of toxicity that still remains in a lot of our centers. And I mean, I think that could be owed to like the low staffing, low morale, things of that nature. How would you speak to the leaders in these centers to be able to turn that around when they're trying to really rewrite the culture in these centers, right?
So I think when there's toxicity in the workplace, whether it's 911 or someplace else, the leader's role is critical. The tone that they set, what they allow to go on, it all comes down to them. If they're going to tolerate the nastiness, the gossip, people getting over, then their managers aren't going to work for them the way that they should be working for them. And leaders need to seek these people out. They need to have a discussion with them and ascertain why they're acting that way, and give them an opportunity to change. And if they don't change, they need to get aggressive, let's say. Okay. And when these toxic people are allowed to carry on like that, it's just, it hurts all the good people. I don't know if you ever heard the expression, we punish competency and we reward incompetency.
Yeah.
So these bad people, we don't want to hear them complain, so we elevate them. But I think and it's also a matter of the leader listening to what is actually happening and accepting that truth, that things are not going as well as they think they might be going. So that leader really needs to be plugged in to what's going on.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, leadership in our centers, um, especially a strong leader that's going back and forth between the patrol side and the center side, however the center's split up at your department, because sometimes there is that break in communication that happens. I know at my larger agency, sometimes there'd be a big thing that they're working, like say a sideshow came through and they heard about it and they want another channel staffed, and then they just kind of show up the day of like, hey, you got some dispatchers for us? And it's like, no, no,
Right.
no, we do not, because 6 people called out, this person over, and so sometimes there's definitely this disconnect between, and I think leaders in these centers, like they're big in making sure there's no failure in that communication between both sides, or maybe better yet said, is strengthening that communication so it doesn't falter.
And I think the communication has to be very strong too between the leader and supervisors, managers, frontline supervisors, assistant directors, whatever you want to call it. They all have to be on the same page. And like a lot of workplaces too, they have these silos. Like this unit doesn't know what that unit's doing, right? Like dispatch, they always get screwed, and they're always the last people to hear of anything, and they have no input, and that's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Dispatchers, the people actually doing the work, they have to be involved in these new procedures, processes on day one, right? When we talk about patrol and communications working together, how about we work together with our dispatchers who are actually doing the work?
So true. So what services does 10-4 Consulting provide, and what does it look like for a department to hire you and work with you to help them with this retention and keeping dispatchers and operators in their seats?
Sure. So 10-4 Consulting focuses on, of course, recruitment and retention of dispatchers and operators, performance metrics, 911 and radio operations, leadership development, and I also do work as an IT vendor liaison as well. But performance metrics and management development, those are all part of recruitment and retention. About 35% of people who leave companies leave because they have a manager that they don't like. So performance metrics as well. If people know how to do their job, if there's clear communication of what the goals are and they're given the tools to do it, they will stay. In terms of recruitment, there's 2 questions that I always ask everybody. The first question is, why do I want to join your agency? And the second question is, okay, you've had 20%, you've had 20 dispatchers leave. Why did they leave, and what have you done to change things since they left? And if the answer is, I don't really know why they left, and we haven't really changed anything, then there's no point in recruiting anybody because you're just going to go around in the same circle. So I would work with an agency over a 6-month period of time, anywhere in the country, me and my team. We would visit there, spend weeks there, form a really strong relationship with the upper management team and with their dispatchers as well, building trust between dispatchers and management and new hires, new candidates, and the agency that they're going to work with. So I want to make sure, Ashley, that I'm going to work with somebody that I like, that I can spend lots of time with and talk to, and that somebody is going to hire me that likes me too, because we're going to be spending a lot of time together.
Yeah, and more importantly, you're essentially asking them to be vulnerable and to make this huge change, right?
Yes, that's the word, Ashley. I'm sorry.
No, please. Yeah, go ahead.
The word is vulnerable. You hit it. And if you're a leader in 911, you're it. Everybody's looking up to you. It's very difficult to say, something, we have a problem here. I need somebody to help me, and I'm going to expose myself and be vulnerable and allow somebody in to reveal deficiencies under my leadership. That's what you're saying. And it's a very tough thing for somebody to do. But in the end, again, it's all about the dispatchers, right? It's all about your staff. If you care about your staff if you really care about these people not coming in on their days off and not doing 16-hour days, you need to change things. You need an unbiased view of things. You need to move in a new direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would say that change in this field is slow coming in general, and it's even slower when leaders in these positions are not admitting that change needs to happen. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, absolutely. we hate change, right, Ashley?
Oh gosh,
we just hate it. It's the worst thing in the world.
Oh my gosh, it really is. I mean, I interviewed a dispatcher who's they had been doing this for 25 years, and she said that when she started, they did it on Excel spreadsheets, and then CAD came in, and they were like threw their arms up. They're like, "This, I'm not doing this. This isn't gonna work." And I was just sitting there like, Excel spreadsheets, I would never do this job on an Excel spreadsheet. But we hate change, right? So that Excel spreadsheet was like gold back then. For me, I'm like, oh, it's crazy. I would never, not on an Excel spreadsheet.
And you know, if you're a leader and you know you've lost 20% of your staff, that's a, you know, that's something that hurts you. You know, it's not like, hey, you know, I just took over and we lost 20% of of every 20 people quit. You know, and you just need to take things in a new direction.
Do you suggest for folks in centers and departments to conduct like the exit interviews or 360 reviews or things like that upon folks exiting? Or how would you suggest people start gathering this information as they're hopefully preparing to bring your company in to work with them to help fix this problem?
So a couple of things. I think that the exit interviews could be a valuable tool. It depends on who's doing the exit interview. Is it somebody that people hate? Is it somebody that they don't want to speak to, that they know they're just going through the motion and checking the boxes? The other thing is, I think that leaders need to sit with people and find out, you know, what's the word on the street? You know, why did these people leave? And it quite possibly be that the answer they get from actually sitting at somebody's console and talking to them and relating documented on their exit interviews, because, you know, they don't trust the agency. If they have all that resentment, just want to, you know, get out of there and never look back. So that's the answer to that.
Definitely. So when someone brings you in and you're consulting with them, and kind of what's the first couple steps that you're taking with them to get that ball rolling, to build that trust, you know, to start implementing changes? What does that look like?
That's a great question. Thank you. So the first part is looking at their online presence, at their job description, job posting, speaking to who is doing the hiring, looking at an organizational chart and seeing, you know, who is in charge of all these various units and subunits, who are the players at the top of the leadership pyramid, so to speak. Getting to know who these people are, and then actually visiting the center and speaking with the dispatchers. And let me tell you, Ashley, when you speak to people and you know, I ask these questions: why do I want to work in your agency? What changes have you made? Within a 5-minute conversation, you can come up with a handful of reasons of why people are leaving. And then on top of that, when you look at social media presence on Facebook, on Instagram, on you know, LinkedIn, whatever the case, you further see more cracks in the foundation of what's wrong and why people don't want to stay, and people's perceptions of the agency, why they can't hire anybody, and what needs to change.
When you speak about online presence, I just want to highlight that because I really think it's such an important new tool that I think law enforcement is kind of finally slowly starting to get on board with these reels and, TikToks and posting on Instagram, being a little more transparent and a little more human, right? Because I think historically we've been very rigid in law enforcement, especially policing. And now, we got, cops pretending to chase donuts down the street on Instagram, and
Right.
we're letting folks be a little more human in this line of work for the public, which is amazing. So I definitely think law enforcement in general needs to hone that online presence. And I think for me, even more importantly, if you have a social media team and your dispatch is not a part of it, you're missing out on a great opportunity to have someone in the center be able to post when things are happening, right when they're happening. Because if you're out there dealing with an in progress incident, and you got to notify a social media person when the dispatch is in there working it as well, and they can put that information out just as well as anyone else can. I think dispatch could be vital in these social media teams as well.
Absolutely. So part of working with an agency is to engage your employees, right? And how do you engage employees besides myself and my team doing it? The leader has to engage their employees. They have to have their employees do their social media, do their marketing, do their graphics, and get them more involved in the agency so that they're more committed to the organization's goals. They're involved, they're plugged in, and that they feel like, hey, I'm not just a body in the seats taking phone calls. These people, they're counting on me to do more than that. I'm in the network with the big guys or gals as well. And these things are not full-time jobs, and it's just a nice breakaway for people to have from dispatching or taking calls or what have you.
It truly is. I think it definitely, right? Because the job's hard enough. So, right, when you get a break from the constant calls or this or that, and you get to go do this thing with the social media team or go out to a recruiting booth. I think I've been seeing a lot more departments utilizing their dispatches and bringing them out to those booths alongside with the patrol to get them involved in that in-person, boots on the ground recruiting that's happening at fairs and malls and schools and etc. Dispatch is vital there too.
Right. So, I'm very big on people going to community events, city hall meetings, and things like that. Leaders have to sell their staff. But I just want to touch upon when you say, bring recruiters out. I think another thing is, okay, so who's recruiting for your agency, right? Is this person has to have an intimate knowledge of the hiring process, testing process, onboarding process. So agencies need to be a little cautious who they're sending out there, because we don't want somebody to ask questions and they don't know the answer. When you're recruiting, what you're doing is you're the recruiter, you're meeting somebody. In that first conversation, you are establishing trust with the candidate, right? They need to know that this person isn't BSing me, that they know what's going to happen to me as I apply and get hired. And that trust will carry on through in the agency and they will want to stay. So in terms, there needs to be a clear delineation. I don't know if that's a word.
I wasn't going to Google it.
There needs to be a clear line of, okay, are we doing community outreach or are we recruiting? And you can have a recruitment team of people, but they have to know the full story to be an effective recruiter.
So true.
And they have to have the right personality too. I job fairs, and I see some of these recruiters. I'm like, not just for 911, but for private agencies too. And I can't believe what these companies send. Like people, they're like this, they're bored. You talk to them, they're so uninterested. And at 911 conferences too, these tech companies that go there, vendors at the vendor circles, some of these people, they have like no personality. Like I can't believe some of these companies. Like, don't these leaders know what what's going on? Like,
Yeah. It's so true because I went to my first dispatch conference this August, a couple months ago, and yeah, I did experience like walking around like this huge vendor hall, and I was like, oh, some of these people I don't want to walk up to, and I like to think I got a good personality where I can go talk to
absolutely.
people. And I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm just gonna keep walking. So, yeah, it's true. I mean, half the battle I think in recruiting is wanting to go work for that place. Like I played college ball and I coached a bit, and half of the job
Right.
is recruiting, and you're selling a dream, like whatever that dream is.
Absolutely.
And you don't. And what I can say further is that it's hard to sell a dream when you know that it's like a garbage chute back there. You know what I mean? So if I'm working for a department that isn't making the changes, we lost 20 people, and they're sending me out here to recruit, and just because we need warm bodies in the seat, that's a hard dream to sell. Like that's tough. But if I'm working for a department that's using me, I can sell that dream. Like it's a little bit on fire, but we're putting it out. Like we're in the process,
So, like in a department that's lost people, if the leader, the director said to their employees, would you recommend that your friends work here? And they all say no, or 80% of them say no, then, you're in trouble and you need to do something. And Ashley, you're 100% right. It's not fair to employees to recruit for an agency or any company for that matter. That's a building on fire. Why would, you're going to have people quit their job and go through this entire process. That's not the right thing to do. That's why you need to focus on that retention aspect and change. And that's a big red flag for a prospective employee to speak to a recruiter and say, oh, we're down 20 slots. What does the recruiter say to that? What's the script?
Yeah. It's true, because one of the things that for folks who come to me and they're at the interview process, they pass like Criticall or whatever pre-employment test that the department's requiring them. I always tell them, I even have like a worksheet, like questions to ask the department, because being understaffed is a thing. I'm not saying only go to departments who are fully staffed, but I think it's important for candidates to understand what the reality of the department situation they're going into, right? What is your mandatory overtime looking like? What is, what are the requirements? What's training going to look like? Am I going to be working graveyard? Am I going to be, like ask those hard questions during this recruitment process, because it's important for retention and, and dollars, it's costing money for departments to bring these folks in for them the last 2 minutes. So it's better for you as a person being recruited to ask these questions and figure out if you're in a good place in your life with your support system, your situation, where you can go through this intense training and end up in a place where there might be low staffing and a little bit of mandatory forced overtime and things of that nature. And it's important for departments to be honest as well, because we need more dispatchers, but we need happy dispatchers too. Like this is our job. It should bring us a little joy with a little bit of stress, because you're not going to get rid of that.
Yeah, a great point. Again, back to trust, it goes back to trust, and it goes back to that recruiter knowing what this person is going to face and presenting a truthful scenario. One thing, if an agency is down 20 dispatchers, they lost 20% of their staff or whatever, hopefully the recruiter can say, well, we've had a change in management. We got rid of some people. We did some new training, and, we're really going in a new direction because we hired Ten-4 Consulting and they're helping us out, or whatever the case, right?
Exactly.
And the recruiter has to be able to say that they are going in a new direction. They cannot lie. It's unethical. It's not the right thing to do. And, we don't want to screw up people's lives.
So true. Okay, so to wrap it up, this is a question that I ask everybody. And for you, it's going to be a little different. So, what would your advice be to someone coming into this field or a leader in these comm centers, how they can motivate their people, or something that a new person should keep in mind when coming into this field?
Okay, I think that when people come into this field, that they should focus on working in an agency that has a great leadership team, where people are happy, where they embrace change and innovation. And in terms of leaders, I think that leaders just need to, strict, I guess, they need to engross themselves with their employees, and they need to leave their ego at the door and to actually listen to what people have to say and act on that and realize that, listen, it's not all about you, right? It's about all of your dispatchers, and it's about the public. You in the C-suite, you're last. And when people are leaving you, because I've seen it throughout my 20-year career, people go from one unit to another and another. It's that they don't want to work for you. You're at the end of the day, you're in charge, and it all starts with you. It starts and ends with the person on top.
Very, very true. So how do people find you, reach out to you, hire you, Ten-4 Consulting, to help solve their staffing issues? How do people get in touch with you?
So I am on LinkedIn, and they could reach out to me via email. My email is cg@ten-4consulting.com. And, I've had a great career, Ashley, and I am more than happy to, just have a conversation with people, just to give some pointers, some guidance, or whatever the case. I dedicated my life to public service, and I would like to continue doing that. So if anybody has any questions, they can message me on LinkedIn or send me an email, and I'm more than happy to help them in any way I can.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to include all your contact info, websites, all that good stuff in the information of this episode. So don't feel like you guys got to write down his contact info. It'll all be there. I really appreciate you coming out, Christian.
Oh, thank you, Ashley. This was great.
Yeah. It's always very refreshing to talk to, folks who are on the police officer side of things, and that good relationship between police and dispatching. Folks like you, FTOs in the field who are training the new officers and who are really pounding that into the new folks, really help build the continued relationships between the two.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I had a great experience, and you're doing a great service for everybody in the dispatch community too.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, I'll be right back with you, okay?
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that was another wonderful episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch. My guest, Christian, and Ten-4 Consulting. Again, all the information for their company and contacts are going to be in the information section of this episode. As you know, in the dispatch world, we do need more dispatchers, and sometimes it is easy to get overwhelmed with that need. And there are folks like Christian and Ten-4 Consulting that are out there with the mission to help you sort through that confusion. So definitely hit him up. Like he said, he's down to just have a conversation if that is something your center is needing. So until next time, everybody, stay raspy. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Let's Talk Dispatch. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube at The Raspy Dispatcher, follow us on Instagram, and check out Let's Talk Dispatch anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'll see you next time, and stay raspy.